Hello, citizen developers. Welcome to lesson 3. In this lesson, we will learn how to create a low-code software. We talked about no-code software before. In lesson 1, we created a simple workflow process. Lesson 2, we added some fields on a no-code basis. In this lesson, we will learn about how to create a low-code software, meaning there is some coding involved, but how do we go about doing that? Now, here's a different process altogether. It's called like kitchen remodel cabinets. It is created for some folks who wanted to have a process where they can take orders and, for the kitchen remodeling, for example, cabinets and implement it and wrap up, for example, right? Those are the 3 steps over here. And if you see, I have some data already over here, right? And the standard, section that you have seen before, again, this section is the custom data field section, and you learned how to create fields for that, for example. So these are the fields that are created. I'll show you the fields as well. But then at the bottom, you see there's a button. So now this is a custom button, right? This is not standard. Standard is save and close, but here's a custom, API that will be called on click of this button. So how do we do that? This is low code, right? So you do everything else on a low code basis. You create fields, you create workflows, but you want something to happen on the click of a button, and that's something you will have to code for it, right? So that API will be called from here. So we'll show you how to do that. So let's close this here and then go look at how it is configured, right? How you could do that. Kitchen remodel cabinets, go to setup. Let's find that process, kitchen remodel. Right? So here, right? So edit process steps. So it's step number 1 itself has that button, where you call it, right? So it's saying the customer requirements in step number 1. Gather all customer requirements in this task and record in this tab. And of course, the contractor would do this work. There is a difference here, with the in the way it is set up here. If you see, for example, first one did not have any person reviewing it. We're saying it will be reviewed by somebody, right? So we said, yes, I'll put reviewer name over here. So there's a name and email and no approval required. Now, again, there are custom fields like we have seen before, and there's the heading that is shown just above those fields. And if you go scroll down here, for example, this is just kind of, giving you when you want a break of the control. You want to break after the first control, the second control, third control. Pretty much you want to have breaks after each field over there, pretty much, right? So that way it's much more cleaner and open, right? And now here is where we have that. So we have add a button, and this is the UI API, right, for that button, right? Like when you click on this button is called send proposal to customer. So you take all the requirements and then you want to send a proposal to the customer via an email, right? And there's the button caption, and you actually write an API where you would actually, code for that require, email sending program that you write. We'll code that here in your software. I mean, in Java or Python, it's pretty much your UI. I mean, your code base that you write, right? It will get called from here, right? And this button has to be rendered after this, control number, because you see that there are control numbers over here on top, right? So after 10, 12 over here, for example, that's the last one filled up. And again, the rendering is gonna start with the lowest number and go to the highest number. So it starts with 1,000 and goes up to, 1,050. And let's see. Okay, it starts with 1,001 and goes up to 1,050, and then rendering would be in ascending order, right? This is the first control that gets rendered on top, followed by this one, then this one, then this four, right? So, and so on and so forth. And now there's a user ID and password, of course, because you're trying to call an API over the internet. So the easiest way is to kind of use a user ID and password. We could probably use some other tokens and API keys, etc. later on. But then for now, you could use this approach, right? And how does this work out, right? So the data from the screen has to go, right? Like some of the data will actually be part of the email. So if you go to this mapping, right, it's going to tell you this becomes input. So this is now showing you that here is the API that we added, right? And to that API, this will go as an input, right? That name of that field is right now over here, right? This is the name of that field that you send, right? This is not going to be output. This is not going to be output. It's going to be input. For this API, this is the input. If you check this one, it becomes output as well. Or if you just have this, it becomes only output. So now we have it like this, input only, right? Then let's look at the other fields. For each of these fields, there's some kind of mapping. This one has no mapping because we don't want to send this, right, as an input or get it back as an output. We are not sending that. It depends what you want, right? This one again is going as an input to this API and in this particular kind of field, right? And let's see. And this also is an input. So all you have to do is that identify all the fields that have to become input or output to that API and mark them accordingly and give the name of that attribute, right? So when we send it as an input, it's gonna be available. Hold on. What happened? It's very slow. But anyway, so we'll come back to that. Okay, so that's about over that, by the way. So there's nothing more there, right? You just have to kind of define that. And now if I go back to this task over here, for example, go to dos, and so this task, right, is the kitchen cabinet, right? Yeah, there it is. If you open this guy, for example, so you see that I think this is the older version. Let's try to use um, so let's try to do this. Let's take this latest version. So if you see here, for example, for some reason I'm not seeing it. Maybe I'm looking down. Yeah, I think I'm looking down one. There it is, right? So if you click on this button, it's gonna send out an email, right? Of course, you need to have that email address who it has to go to, and then it has to provide this estimate, send this email out to that person, to the customer, for example. That is your code doing it. From here, all we have is data, capture data, and here's the say customer email, for example, right? And you just go and say send proposal to customer, right? So proposal sent to the customer by email. So now this one is again in your API. You give a message back that gets displayed here on the screen. So this again not the code from this platform, but it is the API sending a message back that could be displayed to the user, right? So that's it. So you just have now the advantage here is that you could build a software system, a business process management, you know, uh, let's say suite with all kinds of workflows in it and several processes, and also a lot of functionality, for example, which would be coded in the APIs that would implement, right? So now you could actually have up to two buttons over here and do whatever you want, right? Here you're sending an email. Next would be, let's say you're trying to find a customer, for example, which is in your database, in some other database sitting in your, org. So you could just kind of make that you have to maybe pass a first name, last name, and social maybe, right? Or just social, or maybe phone number, stuff like that. So it will find that particular record in the database, and then you return it back and populate the fields over here for that customer, for example, right? That's just an example. You could do whatever you want, pretty much, right? So there's your low code system, and 90% of the work is on a no code basis because you're just setting up our UI and all the workflows easily. You're just coding for the API, right? And then you call it from there. All right, folks, that's it for today. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you.